Hello again. For many years, it was possible for those hoping to advance what they conceived to be a progressive and liberal ideology aimed at eliminating racial prejudice to state firmly that there was no such thing as race. Humanity was a single species, and the trifling differences in skin colour, shape of eyes, height, and so on were of no deep significance. All differences in human character, conduct, and behaviour were accordingly attributable to culture and upbringing. When this theory was first constructed in America in the 1920s and 1930s by people like Franz Boas and Ruth Benedict, it was quite plausible. At least there was no evidence to disprove it. For more than 60 years, the idea that all ethnic groups belong to one species held sway, at least amongst educated people, liberal people, and academics. Then, in the early decades of the present century, a problem arose. It had long been assumed that the Neanderthals, another human species who lived for thousands of years alongside modern humans, were brutish and primitive. It was thought too that for various reasons there had been no interbreeding between the two species, certainly no fertile offspring. After all, that's the thing with different species, isn't it? We now know that Neanderthals and modern humans did breed together, and that most humans today actually carry Neanderthal genes. We know too that the Neanderthals were a good deal more clever and advanced than was once thought. They occupied Europe for many years and were doing complex things like making string, producing glue, and even building the first structures ever found. It is now thought that modern humans may have learned a lot from them. At any rate, they did have sex with each other in the Middle East, and the result is that almost every ethnic group in the world today has Neanderthal DNA. This includes all Europeans, all Asians, Australians, Native Americans, and the inhabitants of South America, but not black Africans. With few exceptions, they lack those genes which everybody else in the world possesses. There was some flow of Neanderthal genes into places like Ethiopia and Eritrea, where the kingdom of Axum was found, but everywhere else in Africa, no Neanderthal genes at all. Instead, black Africans have another kind of relict DNA, that from so-called ghost populations of extinct and primitive species, such as Homo erectus. What this means is that black Africans are somehow different from everybody else in the world. There are around 900 million such people in Africa, and they have, instead of the Neanderthal DNA that most people in the rest of the world have, the DNA of a very early and primitive human species. Now, we can certainly debate the significance, if any, of these facts. But what we cannot do is debate whether or not it is the case. It is the case, and about that there is no possible doubt at all. It may, of course, be argued that the lack of Neanderthal DNA is not important, but that would go very much against modern thinking. Since the discovery of those genes some years ago, it has become increasingly clear that the reason that they have remained part of our genetic heritage is that they are very useful and important, not least because a couple of the genes relate to the architecture of the brain. What about the genes from the so-called ghost population of ancient humans, which is preserved in the DNA of black Africans? Is this of any significance? The answer is that nobody knows, because there is no appetite at all for exploring the subject. What we can say with confidence, though, is that differences are often observed between people of black African ancestry and those of white European heritage. No doubt some of these differences can be explained by culture and upbringing, but we cannot exclude either the possibility that some may have a deeper cause, one which is coded in our DNA, and that to keep chanting the mantra that race is a social construct these days is about as sensible as claiming that the earth is flat.